Hey everybody, I'm Suzanne Barrett Justis, and in today's video, we're gonna paint a sleepy cat. Now, what I'm gonna go for in this particular painting is not so much all the tight detail that you're used to seeing in my videos. You're gonna see me try to loosen up a little bit. Now, we'll see if I can actually pull it off, but this painting is more about mood and lighting, okay? So I'm gonna try to keep it soft. I'm thinking about a pretty little sleeping cat, so I'm looking for contrast. I'm looking for color and just form and shape. So let's see if I can pull it off. Stay with me to the end of the video and you'll see how it turns out. So again, thank you so much for joining me. And if you are my subscribers, as always, thank you so very much. And if you're not a subscriber, go ahead and smash that subscribe button now and we'll be best friends. And you'll get to see all the cool videos and you'll ring that bell and you'll know when the next one comes out. So without further ado, let's go in and paint this sleeping cat. To start this piece, I just do a very loose sketch with vine charcoal, and you'll see I made those little marks at the sides of the substrate just to mark off where the edge of a frame might go. So I try my best to stay off the edges just to give myself a little room. Here's our starting palette for this sleeping kitty. So I have Italian, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, Van Dyke brown. I have manganese violet, ivory black, Payne's gray, ultramarine blue, dioxazine purple. I have two titanium whites. This is ice blue. This color is a Richardson color. It's a semi-transparent color, but it is nice for toning. I have Italian umber. This happens to be a Michael Harding color that I just need a little bit of green. I'll probably be doing a lot of green grays here. And of course, one of my faves, this is the King's Blue. So I may be adding some more colors, but that's what we're starting with today. Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing. Okay, here you see our playground for today. And we went over the palette a little bit. The substrate painting on is a medium textured or lightly textured. It's not as super slick as some of the gessoed panels I've been using. It's just got a little tiny bit of tooth, not a lot. And of course our reference. And the reference today came from Pixabay. And I'll give a link to it later and let you know if you want to follow along and use the same link, same picture. And you know, I'm keeping it loose. This is not a portrait. This is just me playing with paint. I wanted to get more of a feeling. I'm not really looking for exactness here. I just want to kind of loosen up and play today. So I'm going for mood over technicality, I suppose. So the brushes and tools I'm using today, I've got, actually, this is a very old brush. It's one of my mom's. It's an old badger hair filbert, but it's been worn down so much that it's become somewhat of a smusher, and it's a really great blending brush. So I've got this little handy dandy brush, and I believe it was a, gee whiz. You can't even see it anymore. It's just so old. But anyway, that's what I've got. And I've got lots of soft brushes today. I do have one number 7 rosemary filbert, ivory filbert that I have just for application. I have several, actually they're red sables. I have a number 4 red sable, series 81. And I have a number 6 red sable, series 81 in Rosemary's brushes. I've got several Eclipse brushes. I've got this long filbert. That's the Eclipse long filbert number 5. This is actually an older brush. It's a Hamburg Creative Mark brush, but these are pretty nice little brushes if you've never used them before. I have a number 5 Rosemary Eclipse filbert, and I have a number 2 pointed round of the Eclipse line of Rosemary, and I have a number 5 series 278, which is a natural hair brush. I believe this is Mongoose. So I am going with soft brushes. I'm going for atmosphere. I'm going for light and fluffy and sunny. That's what I'm looking at, okay? So let's go ahead and, oh, don't forget, I also have this sucker, because you know how much I love these. This is a wipeout tool, Creative Mark. You can get these right off of Jerry's Artorama. These are great for whiskers and all kinds of fun stuff. So got to keep this handy too. I'm going to try my best to do this as much alla prima as I can. Granted, I'm starting a little late in the day. I've got students coming today. I'm probably not going to get it finished, but I'm going to do as much alla prima as I can. And let's see where we go. Start off by making some grays, and I need a background gray and one for the actual blanket that the cat's laying on. So this gray is made mainly with titanium white, the yellow ochre, Italian green umber, and King's blue. And then I make a different one with just a little bit more of the yellow ochre in it. And I've also got to have the blanket that the cat's laying on. And so I'm taking just some red, it's permanent alizarin crimson, burnt sienna, and some Payne's gray. And I have 2 different values of it. So I'm taking a little bit of a wider brush and just kind of popping in the background. You can see how thin it is. It's actually running down the the substrate, but it's okay. I'm just trying to kind of give it a wet surface for me to just get this in. And of course, this piece, as I've mentioned earlier, is not about detail. It's more about contrast and light and mood. So I'm using, I'm taking the yellow ochre and mixing a little bit more of the ivory black and just kind of making that shade in the back and softening it with a large fluffy brush and just getting in the backgrounds and then working my way towards the foreground. Of course, the pillow in the back. And then I know I'm wanting to make this cat very lit up because he's or she is sitting in the sunshine. So I'm trying to keep my edges of the cat light. So I'm all about contrast here. I start blocking the cat in, and remember, I do want to keep the edges light on the cat. So I'll work on working the contrast of the background. So if I have to darken the background up a little bit, I will. And so that's why I went very thinly with the paint in the background, because I knew I'd be adding more depending on how much contrast I really desired with the cat. Again, I think I say this as much to convince myself that this piece is not about detail, but mainly about contrast and color and light and mood. So I've got the exterior part of the cat kind of lit up. You can see I've got those edges there, and I popped in some little white values, very creamy, light colored values. Now remember too, I am painting on top of the charcoal, so it does kind of blend a little bit. Also too, folks, this piece will be available on Patreon in 2 parts. So if you want to catch the full-length version of this video, please check out my Patreon channel. Now I'm just kind of popping in little colors here and there, and of course I'm dying to get into this face of the cat, but I really want to save that for last. So I will move around quite a bit, but unusual way for me to start a piece is to start with my lighter values, and basically that's kind of what I'm doing, mainly because I want to keep them clean, and just popping some color in. And the blocking in takes a little bit of time, but you'll see how everything goes. If you follow along, you'll see it all makes sense. And so I am keeping in mind where my light source is coming from. And so I will have a cooler, darker side of the cat, and you'll see how I make corrections, but as the cat kind of morphs off to the right side of the substrate. Now, I know it's going to seem really strange, but there is a lot of cool purples and blues in this cat just because of the light. So at first it seems really weird to have this big blob of, basically it's dioxazine purple, ultramarine blue, and a little bit of black popped in there. And then the lighter version is mixing in the king's blue. And I'm creating the undershine of this cat. Now, because of the way the light is hitting her, this is very illuminated and very lit up, but I have to have that highlight of the purples in there. So it seems kind of weird when you first see how this is going in, but understanding that with layering color, you will, you almost have to kind of have an idea of where the painting's going, and I am layering color, so therefore this will all make sense, I promise. And I do a lot of the initial painting with my eyes very squinty, and I like to be squinting just to block out any of the detail that I'm looking at when looking at the reference, and I only see what I need to see. But even with this large paintbrush, which happens to be an Eclipse Filbert, a larger one, I'm able to create somewhat of a hairy stroke. Now, I'm being very careful about how much of the tail I actually put in because the tail itself is in a lot of shadow, and you'll see soon. Now, looking at the blanket that the cat's laying on, she's in direct sunlight. She's just sucking up all that heat. And so I'm breaking it up into sections of where the light is actually hitting the cat and the bedspread. So I'm putting in the darker version of this color on the bottom. And as you'll see as I continue through, that lower left-hand corner will be a lot darker. Now here I am using alizarin crimson and ivory black to create more and more of a shadow. So I keep building it up, and wanting to create the form of the bedspread. The cat's laying on a bedspread. So, and there was a very dark kind of a grayish purple where the cat's body is creating somewhat of a shadow, and figuring that the sunlight is coming from the upper left-hand corner, that part of the cat would not be illuminated, therefore it would be a shadow. It makes sense. And I'm just popping colors here and there, and I know initially when painting first starts out, it doesn't always look like it's going to make sense, but stay with me, you'll see. So even though my reference didn't have a lot of cadmium in the ears, I like to play with cadmium. So I'm putting in a little cadmium red as if the light is passing through the ear itself, and just creating the form of the ear. Now there's my handy dandy paint scraper. You can get those through Creative Mark from Jerry's Artorama. And it's great for creating that, I can just cut it in. Now, I so wish that I had been able to do this completely alla prima because I love using that tool to cut whiskers in. But alas, in this painting, I end up painting the whiskers in. Now you see, I'm not really doing detail here, and you know how much I love to paint eyes, especially cat eyes, but in this case, the cat's eyes are closed. And I'm just creating that soft feeling. I want this really to be a lot about mood. So I do have to put her stripes in, and I do have to suggest where all the light is. But I am being very careful about the actual not trying to put a lot of detail in. And what I'm talking about here is this is the next day, and I realize I need to have a little bit more contrast. So I'm taking one of my larger brushes. It's one of the, this is the 278 series of the, this is the 278 series. It's a flat actually, and I hardly ever use flats, but this one is doing the trick. And you can see how much darker I'm going back there. And I really want my cat to stand out. So I'm using a color, basically it's yellow ochre and ivory black in it. And it just already made this seem so much more dramatic just by creating that dark shadow back there. And I know that I want a lot of contrast. So yeah, to make contrast, you kind of have to create lights and darks. And so going back and correcting what I initially did on the day before. Always wanting that contrast. So I'm putting a lot of, just a combination of yellow ochre and cad yellow and burnt sienna, and creating a lot of these little fluffy, light, warm parts of this little cat. She's like a little tortoise, like a tortoise shell, and I don't know, she's a tortoise shell tabby. And I'm just popping in those colors, and whenever you get to put a lot of fun colors like this together, it just is, it just makes my heart sing. And having purples and blues with oranges and yellows, hello, complementary colors, it always creates a lot of fun in a painting. Now I'm going to be really careful about not adding too much detail here in the tail yet, because as you can see from the photo reference that is on the left, how much more shadow has to go in to this bedspread. So I'm just kind of suggesting that there is, stripes in the cat's tail and where everything's going, but you'll see I'll end up creating a lot more intensity and shadow in the bedspread, and it makes everything else pop. Remember, not about detail, more about contrast, color, and mood. being very mindful where the light is hitting. I have to be careful. Now, as you see where I have the very light part of the bedspread that the cat's lying on, I am keeping my light only on those surfaces that light is hitting. So you can see what I'm showing you here is sometimes I'll take a dollop of paint with a little bit of it's kind of impasto on the brush, but I'm letting the little thick edge do the work for me, since I am painting wet on wet here. And I'm using my handy dandy short sword brush and adding some of the little hairs, but keeping it only within the light area that is where the sunlight is actually hitting the cat. So I'm just kind of popping in all those little light values and having a ball with it. Yes, I'm using my little sword brush, and yes, I am struggling with the fact that I am trying not to put a lot of detail in because that's where all the fun is for me. But you can see it's coming together, and because of the layers of paint, it starts to make sense as to why I would put such an intense blue purpley splotch right there in the middle of the cat. And so I'm using the sword brush just to create the look of hair. And when you need to just have some really short little spots of light, you can turn your sword brush over and just use the tip, the pointed tip, to create those little spots. And so we're just laying in the color and the highlights where I can, and trying to not be too, not too detailed. But unfortunately, you can see I'm going a little nuts here and creating a lot of detail just because it's fun. Where that warm sunlight is hitting the cat is on the top, so I have to get in there and put some warm colors. And of course, it is always easier for me to paint in one particular direction. And if you do flip your substrate, don't forget to flip your reference as well. So here we are. I am just now painting in more and more of the light and the warm colors that are in the cat. I may be exaggerating them a little bit, but again, I wanted this to be about mood and light, and I just wanted it to be about a feeling. So I think this is where we're going with this. It feels good to me anyway, and I am enjoying the ride. I'm going back in with my sword brush. This happens to be an ivory sword. I believe it's a 1/8 inch, and hitting the highlights. Now, since I had to morph up on this cat, unfortunately that little hump that I just went above to add onto the cat is not as bright as I want it to be, because it's an afterthought. I had missed it the first time around, so I was adding it the second time. So I know I'm gonna have to lay that in a little bit stronger so I can maintain that brightness that I need. So I'm just kind of laying colors in, and I'm using a lot of burnt sienna and the cad red, and then putting ivory black on top, just creating the form. Now this reference that I have here did come from Pixabay, And I'll try to have that available to you guys in the description. And I've been avoiding this little paw because the paw is in the immediate foreground, and it's also a little foreshortened. So getting that where it's the tip of the paw is in somewhat of a shadow because it's facing away from the light, I've got to try to create that look. And yes, there are stripes on her legs, so I'm trying to get everything in, but I'm already feeling it. This painting feels really fun to me. Now to intensify that shadow on that side, now, so I can finish the tail. And again, you can see how much darker it is, and it helps for you to see where the reference is. And I'm not doing every bit of detail that's in the reference and the patchwork of the quilt or anything like that. I'm just creating the basic contrasts and shadows in this piece. But yeah, I couldn't help but add some of the texture because it helps to carry it over on the top. As you see in the reference, and that's why I'm hitting this now with just titanium white, and I really want that to seem bright on the top because that's where the sun's hitting. And yeah, so if you guys have any questions whatsoever, please do not hesitate and leave it in the comments section, and I'll be glad to answer them. I'm real good at that, so I watch constantly for questions to pop up on my YouTube channel. So yeah, I'll be glad to answer any questions you have. And again, just popping in this color. I'm keeping it loose. I'm not, I thought I was going to try to cut this in, and you can see I'm using the paint scraper. It wasn't working because the painting was too dry, even with that glazing of the dark shadow. So yeah, I'll be signing this one with a brush as opposed to the scraper. But I am not sure about every piece of anatomy that I'm looking at, and I'm assuming the part that I'm painting right now is the hind leg tucked up underneath. I just, for the sake of just, not knowing or not being certain, I just followed my the look of the actual reference. I didn't ask questions, and you can see I'm still making corrections. I just changed the angle of that front leg a little bit and pulled it down, and still using that little sword brush, popping in all the detail, being able to create that little fuzzy edge with the cat's paw. And yeah, this is the fun stuff, guys. This is what I enjoy, and really getting to use my brushes to their fullest extent for all their capabilities that they do. All these tools that we have, you can create so much fun texture. Now to start with the detail, I'm using a very fine ivory rigger just to start the detail. This is a very small painting. It's only an 8 by 10. So I really have to use little tiny brushes to get any detail in. And I'm not that I'm really trying to get the detail. I just need a small brush to get anything in for that matter. So I'm exaggerating a little bit too much on the warmth. I should have just kept the warmth on one side, the bright side of the cat that's being lit up on the left, and you'll see I'll come back in and do some graying down and color correction on the right side of the mouth. But I'm getting it in and having a ball with this. And I can tell you I have to lower that right eye, or the eye on the right, I should say. The cat's left eye, but the eye on the right will have to be lowered. And I'm just, popping it in, and I'm still using the rigger. And you can watch how I start loading the paint here, and you'll start to see the cat's face come into focus. A lot of the grays that I'm using in the cat's fur is the same gray I made for the background. It was the yellow ochre, ivory black, white mixture. And by using some of the same colors throughout a painting like this, it does give it a more harmonious look. It keeps the painting grooving. It makes it harmonious. And so I will use a lot of the same colors throughout the painting, whether it's background, foreground, what have you. It's all going in there. Now, I'm kind of freaked out by the highlight. Even though the cat in the reference photo did have the highlight inside of her eyes, I kind of end up taking that out because it's kind of freaking me out just a little bit. I didn't want it to be about detail. I wanted it to be about mood. And believe me, I'm saying this as much to convince myself of this because I keep adding detail. Oh, those fun little stripes on the top of her head. And again, those are being hit with lots of sunlight because she has her head kind of bowed down a little bit, so she's catching all kinds of light there. And I'm still using that little rigger. It's doing the trick for me. And putting in some stripes and some more highlights. It's coming together. I actually have enjoyed this immensely. And it's nice for me to be able to loosen up a little bit after a lot of paintings with detail. Little exercises like this are nice. I really do enjoy it. And it's good that I can actually show you the cat reference with the actual painting. Now I have my cat's face turned a little bit more towards the left, whereas the cat in the reference is kind of looking straight forward. And again, I didn't want this to be about detail. It's really just me playing and loosening up and playing with light. And yeah, I'm having a big time. And it's almost time for whiskers. I can feel it. But I'm kind of wishing I could scrape them in. But you know what? With a good brush, I'll be able to get whiskers in, no problem. And you'll see. And my handy dandy sword brush is making whiskers just fine. And when they're too fat, no problem. You go back over them and you clean them up a little bit. You can cut underneath them with either paint thinner, take some of the paint off, and just go underneath them with a little bit of a darker color, and bam, you've got thinner whiskers. And you know me, since my hand works better in one direction, I'm going to go ahead and flip my piece over and create the whiskers on the other side. Now, in the perfect world, those would be bright white because of the light that's coming in on the cat. But you know what? We're fine with this, and I think, folks, we are about done, because you know, once you put whiskers in, you're pretty much finished. And here you have it. So here's the completed piece. And as you can see, I really had to try not to put a lot of detail in, because that's what I like to do. But I wanted to go for the feel. And I really wanted this piece to be that, just about the feels. And I think I got it. I really did have fun with this. I wasn't able to do it alla prima. It really was in the course of actually 2 days. I started it on Friday, kind of afternoon, finished it today, which is a Monday. Didn't work on it at all over the weekend. So it's a 2-day piece, or at least it was for me. And I could have loosened up a little bit more. And by loosening up, I would have left the little brushes alone and just kind of played with it and had fun. But it's who I am. I like the detail. So I hope you did enjoy today's video. And if you did, give me a thumbs up. I appreciate that so much. And if you're not a subscriber, go ahead and subscribe. Not that hard. But I would appreciate that very much. And if you have any questions about anything that I covered in today's video, yeah, leave it in the comment section. I'll get to you, I promise. I'm really good like that. I'll try to get to you right away. As soon as I know that there's a question, I get to it. So go ahead and leave it in the comment section. If you have any, ideas of something you'd like to see me paint, yeah, leave that in the comment section too. Let's fill it up with all kinds of positivity and good stuff. And yeah, there you have it. So from Kingsport, Tennessee, I want to say thank you so much for joining me. And I'll see you next time. Bye.